Support for this episode comes from Signature Bank.
Hey, this is Gary Head, founder and chairman at Signature Bank of Arkansas. 21 years ago, we set out to build something different, a community bank that knows your name, values relationships, and gives our bankers the authority to serve you the way you deserve. That's still who we are today. Whether you're buying a home, growing a business, or planning for what's ahead, our team is here to help. With local decision-making and personalized service you can count on. From mortgage lending to Banco C, our bilingual banking team, to our signature private wealth management, we're built to support you at every stage. Because at the end of the day, we believe your bank should be invested in the same community you are. Call us today at 479-684-3700 or visit us online at signature.bank. And be sure to tell us you heard about us right here on I Am Northwest Arkansas.
7 years in, I'm still running into people in this region who are playing the longest game in the room. People who are not thinking about the next quarter, they are thinking about the next decade, sometimes the next 2 decades. And they are doing it right here in Northwest Arkansas, with the land and the community and the history of this place as their guide. Jeremy Hudson is one of those people. He is the co-founder and CEO of Specialized Real Estate Group, a Fayetteville-based development and property management company that has spent the better part of 2 decades asking one question over and over again. How do we help this region grow without losing what makes it special? You've probably experienced their work without even thinking about it. Echo Modern Flats in downtown Fayetteville, the South Yard, and right here where we are sitting today inside the chess room at the Stonebreaker, which is part of the remarkable 119-acre Markham Hill neighborhood tucked into a protected old-growth Ozark forest just minutes from the University of Arkansas campus. More than half of Markham Hill is preserved as open space. 39 acres are protected through a conservation easement with the Northwest Arkansas Land Trust. This neighborhood took 6 years to plan before a single home was built. That is not a mistake or a delay. That is a philosophy. And Jeremy and his team are doing it all over again with Drake Farms, a 165-acre mixed-use district in North Fayetteville, designed to unfold over the next 15 to 20 years. I have been waiting to have this conversation for a long time, and I cannot think of a better place to have it than right here on the Hill. Stay tuned next for my conversation with Jeremy Hudson from Specialized Real Estate Group.
It's time for another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas, the podcast covering the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life in general here in the Ozarks. Whether you are considering a move to this area or trying to learn more about the place you call home, we've got something special for you. Here's our host, Randy Wilburn.
Jeremy Hudson, welcome to I Am Northwest Arkansas. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for having me.
Good. I'm glad to be here at the Stonebreaker. I've actually been here multiple number of times for events, for meetings. I've had coffee meetups here. This is a great third space that people can come to in the heart of Fayetteville. Listen, I want to start at the beginning because I think the origin story really explains everything that comes after it. Before Specialized Real Estate Group, you were in construction management and residential brokerage. That first big project, Echo Modern Flats, was supposed to be a fairly standard deal. What happened that changed everything for you?
Yeah. My backstory is, born and raised in rural Arkansas, came to Northwest Arkansas to go to school and studied construction management. Even prior to studying construction management, I always had a desire, some sort of inkling or calling towards the built environment or architecture. And rather than getting into architecture or construction out of college, I found myself in real estate and spent about 6 or 7 years in real estate prior to really beginning that first project of Eco Modern Flats. And those years I kind of call, looking back on them, they were my wax on, wax off years. I did not understand what was happening, at the time. I had learned and worked some in construction. We transacted on a lot of residential brokerage sales, did a lot of property management work. But what I didn't understand is what it was preparing me for and all that. So that's the very short version, of leading up to Eco Modern Flats. And the story there is in some ways unique, but in some ways kind of typical of kind of a classic real estate development, that we had an idea and saw an opportunity, but we didn't have the resources to do it ourselves. And so we reached out to folks that we knew had resources and we had a relationship with, and they believed in our idea and vision and came alongside us and provided those resources. And as you said, really starting that project really was not, there wasn't anything special about it. It was a dilapidated, older apartment project that clearly needed new life. And we had gone through a series of somewhat similar projects for other people, helping them, particularly in the Great Recession, working for banks or individual investors, and rebranding, reinvigorating, and renovating things. And so really this was just the next one of those, but with an ownership stake. But what happened during the process of just due diligence and learning and kind of discovery of the project, we realized that a huge economic key to that project being successful ran through utility savings, which then led us down this road of sustainability, which then really began to open my eyes about sustainability holistically, not just environmental impact, but the impact on the human, and particularly health and indoor air quality. And so we set out for LEED certification, again, originally because of energy efficiency, but then it taught me all of these other things that then began to become personal, because growing up in Arkansas, like a lot of people, I suffered from allergies and asthma. In my wax on, wax off real estate days, all the time we were talking about whether it was a home or an apartment, it's like, oh, it smells like a new carpet smell or freshly painted. And I began to realize, like, oh crap, it's like off-gassing and formaldehyde. And so these light bulbs started clicking for me. And I was like, well, wait a minute, like these things that people think are positive things, and I even was selling as positive things, are not that. They may be actually harming, the people that are renting or buying these places. And it was just this giant light bulb for me that I was like, well, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Like, I have to, whatever I'm going to work on, I have to make it healthier and healthier indoor. And then at kind of the same time, I grew up in rural Arkansas again, in somewhat of an isolated community, came and had a great college experience, got to travel a little bit in Europe and see, a completely different type of urban environment, and had these different experiences, including, like any good real estate guy would in his mid-20s, single guy, and bought a 4-bedroom house in a classic subdivision, and kind of began to see like some of the holes in some of that promise, at least for me.
Yeah.
And, come home and shut my garage door and hang out in my backyard in a 6-foot privacy fence. And even though I knew some of my neighbors, it was almost awkward sometimes. Like those neighborhood wasn't built for community. And so I took this, desire to build things more sustainably, this desire to make things healthier, and this desire to build a type of apartment community that would actually connect neighbors. And all those 3 pillars is kind of what went into eco. And really, if I did anything right there, it was realize what I didn't know and hire experts. And we ended up with a great design team and great consultants on the energy side. And honestly, even just like friends that knew things about wellness that I didn't know, and brought them to the table, and just had a highly collaborative process that ultimately led to that project, which has won awards and national and global recognition, but more importantly, been a wonderful place for people to live. And what that was really a platform, a launching point for the value system that now Specialized has.
Yeah. I mean, and that seems to be the through line that you picked up with Eco Modern Flats, and that has reared itself in everything that you do.
Yes. Yeah.
So you've talked about how Specialized Real Estate Group is either building where there is already a meaningful place, or building at a scale where you can create one, when you are looking at a potential site, what does the filter actually look like in practice? Like, how do you know when a piece of land is worth the commitment?
That's a great question. Yeah, we use the language cultivating healthy neighborhoods. And we chose cultivating on purpose because sometimes that may mean just a really small intervention. Think about our project 200 West Center where our SEG is and a Lululemon is. Like, it was just one little building. It was already right in the middle of downtown. And we felt like, this kind of tired, old, underutilized office building could be more. And so it was this small intervention that helped lead towards a healthier neighborhood around the square. Or the vast majority of our work up until at least the last couple of years has been infill multifamily community. So looking for places where there's already walkability, there's already places to work, shop, eat, but there aren't as many places, at least for younger or people that are renting to live. And so cultivating that neighborhood by providing housing, healthy, sustainable housing in the right location. What we're working on now and how that's kind of evolved is the reality is Northwest Arkansas cannot only grow in a healthy way, in my opinion, just within its downtowns. That's clear.
Yeah.
Even with all of the efforts that our cities have put into infill and revitalization and growth in our urban cores, the vast majority of development is happening on the perimeters of our cities. And I think that's a risk. And so cultivating healthy neighborhoods sometimes for us means doing it at the neighborhood scale and kind of planting a new garden. And whether that's Markham Hill, whether that's Drake Farms, and it's a bigger effort. It's a longer term effort.
Because you're starting something from scratch.
Yes.
Almost.
Yeah. Yeah. We're starting from, and there's a lot that goes into that. And there's a lot of parallels as you talk about garden, even though I do not have a green thumb.
No, you did. You definitely did answer my question. And I think that speaks to specifically some of the challenges that a lot of real estate developers run into in terms of building community, right? I mean, it's one thing. I mean, I've met a lot of real estate developers and a lot of them are quite capable to build just about anything.
Yeah.
Whether or not you should build just about anything is the question, right? Because the idea is, it's not, you would hope it is a field of dreams. If you build it, they'll come, but that doesn't always turn out to be the case.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I mean, it is really difficult, honestly, counter the way the vast majority of the real estate community in this country works. Like many things, we have engineered out risk, particularly on the capital side. And so that has resulted in a lot of specialty development, whether, you have people and zoning that is for X use, office use, single family use, retail use, industrial use. And there's a lot of benefits to getting really good at doing something like that. But I think fast forward several decades of that being the way that a lot of the U.S. and the world has developed, there's less expertise in, mixed use and building places that can be new downtowns and new neighborhoods that have a mixture of uses and experiences and building types. And so it is a lot harder. I mean, it really just is. There's a lot more, there's a lot more risk. There are a lot more variables. And, it doesn't always mean that every project has to be mixed use. As a matter of fact, a lot of times, what we look for is where can we bring our expertise, our product, if you will, our housing solution to a neighborhood that already has a lot of the other things.
Right.
Downtown Rogers, great example. We're building new housing right in the middle of downtown Rogers. We are putting a small, hospitality with Ozark charcuterie there, but we don't need shops and restaurants because they're already there. They're already there. There's just not enough housing. And so that's where it just kind of depends. We're looking for places both at a large scale, but then at a small scale that we can add the right ingredient, plant the right seed on, but with a focus, our core focus is housing. That's where we feel we have the most expertise and the most value add for our community. And frankly, as we all know, that's one of the region's biggest needs.
It is. Housing is a huge need. And as you and I were talking before we started this episode, we had mentioned some of our interactions previously at some of the ULI events that have happened here. And they just had Strong Towns event that was here, and the Congress of New Urbanism has met here in Northwest Arkansas. A lot of people are coming here to see what we're doing, right? And so sometimes you almost think, well, they must think we have it figured out here in Northwest Arkansas. But I think we're still trying to figure things out.
Yeah, I think that's right. But I do think there's excitement and maybe anticipation that Northwest Arkansas is at a place where we have an opportunity to do things, learn from other places, both other places that have done things well and other places that have done things not so well. And we're kind of uniquely positioned maybe to chart a new course of how a region could grow in a healthy and sustainable way. And there has been a lot of good leadership at the city, regional, philanthropic level, to provide the resource and the platform to move us that direction. And I think that's really exciting.
It is. It definitely is. And I always enjoy welcoming new people to Northwest Arkansas to kind of see what I see, right? I came here 11 years ago. This was not on my bingo card when I moved from the East Coast. It was not what I was thinking of. But, a good friend of mine who convinced me to move here, Mark Zweig, who I talk about quite a bit on this podcast, he's the reason why I came here to Northwest Arkansas. And, he saw something here that he moved here even before that. And so I'm really thankful for those opportunities to kind of see a new space. And, as I tell people, we are in the Western frontier, right? When you think of like where we are, if you go way back into the 1800s, this was the wild, wild West. Yeah. And it has considerably changed. So when you think about what goes into developing and building communities in an area like this, it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of effort. I'd be curious. I want to talk a little bit about Markham Hill, and we're sitting on Markham Hill right now. Most neighborhoods typically start with roads and lots. This one started with conservation. Can you walk me through that decision? What does it look like to kind of flip the traditional development model on its head and lead with the land instead of the layout? Because that's kind of what you have here.
Yeah. So in the early days of just literally kind of discovering this place, it is right in the middle of Fayetteville, right at the doorstep of the university. But yet so many people didn't know about it, didn't know it was here, or had a little bit of interaction, came to an event in Pratt Place. I can remember coming up here to Pratt Place and driving like, man, I feel like I'm in the middle of absolutely nowhere, And so there was a big discovery process. And what we realized is, this place is special. It's special when you're up here on the property, whenever you're coming over, I-49 and you see it, it's this prominent location. And what we began to realize as we dug more into the history and the ecology is there was significant old growth forest, particularly on the south and western slope of this mountain. The top of the hill has had, different things happening on it over time. It was agriculture, and then it was a summer camp, and it's been different things. But particularly, again, the hillsides have these beautiful old growth forests. They have, these beautiful rock outcroppings and all this great ecology, right here in the middle of town. And we realized okay, traditional, the traditional formula would of course be to kind of cut down forest, build roads, maybe trees remain in people's backyards, but that clearly would have really changed things up here. And so instead, through research and discovery of other places and organizations, we saw okay, there's a playbook out there for taking, and instead of the value proposition being, you're buying a lot in a, with a forest, you're buying a home or buying a lot with a forested backyard, large lot type subdivision. Instead, we could concentrate the housing where it made the most sense with the land and preserve. And so end up with what we say is you end up with neighbors out your front door and nature out your back. And so rather than, just having a large backyard, you end up with 100 acres out your back door and a meadow, kind of Central Park out your front, in a front porch type community. And a big part of my learned experience in the built environment is how valuable the right type of neighborhood design can be. I'm blessed to get to live in Fayetteville, in an old neighborhood with an eclectic and diverse mix of neighbors, some that are brand new, some that have been there for decades. And that's because those homes and those neighborhoods were designed, for people and for connection. And so that's the desire, is if we can build front porches, we can build more compact. It's not only more friendly environmentally, it's also more friendly, to the human, and creates those opportunities for connection, but still allows for escape into nature at a much larger scale than you would ever have in your own, if this was developed in a more traditional way.
Yeah. And it's as I think about this, and I'm glad you mentioned the Pratt Place farm and the barn. I know for those of you that are listening to this that may have spent time going to the Roots Festival, they actually took this whole place over one year. It was amazing. And you're absolutely right. The first time I ever came up here, I realized, wow, we're so close to the stadium, yet I have never been over here, right? That's the crazy part. Now I come up here all the time, but every time I bring somebody new up here, they're always like, I had no idea this was here. Yeah. And that's a cool feeling. And so I've actually encouraged people to come up here and come stay for a week and do a staycation and stay at the hotel. The rooms are beautiful here. Had a chance to talk about that with some of your people not long ago on a previous episode of the podcast. But what I want to ask you specifically, and we alluded to this earlier, you said this project took 6 years to plan before homes were being built. And I think when most people hear that, and I think if a real estate developer listens to that and thinks of it, their first instinct is to ask, what took so long?
Yeah.
But I have a feeling that timeline wasn't an accident. What does 6 years of patience actually look like from the inside?
Yeah, I think, not to overplay it, but it kind of goes back to this, for us, this idea of cultivation. Like at the beginning, we were very much in a discovery process. We knew this was a beautiful, rare opportunity that we wanted to steward. We didn't know what that meant. So we went through, first and foremost, there was nearly 2 years just in the acquisition. There were some complicated things about the acquisition. And then there was a couple of year process for entitlements. Not all of that was the formal entitlement process, because we did a significant amount of planning and design. I think by the time we started the entitlement process, we had multiple iterations of a master plan with multiple consultants trying to understand how to steward, how to conserve, but then also how to make something that is, was viable, with this kind of loose vision to make Fayetteville's next great neighborhood. And so it took a couple of years of acquisition and due diligence. It took a couple of years of design and entitlement. And then, of course, also, 2020 happened. And so that certainly was a part of it.
That pesky pandemic.
Yeah. And then the reality is there was some major, there's some major infrastructure things that had to happen up here, even though there's a water tower on top of the hill. We had to build new water infrastructure to ensure we had adequate water pressure. There was no sewer connection, so we had to build a sewer connection all the way down to I-49. So there's some major kind of pieces that had, to get unlocked. Also, being very careful and purposeful about the stewardship of the areas that we wanted to conserve and what was going to be a conservation easement proper, what might make the most sense as a city park. And that's one of the things that we ended up working with the city of Fayetteville and the university as they were building the Traverse Trail. Rather than pure private conservation, we ended up dedicating about 10, I think it's just over 10 acres to the city of Fayetteville along the new Traverse Trail connection. So just lots of components there that frankly took time to understand what the right decision was and then execute.
Yeah. And I mean, certainly nothing worth having ever comes easy, right? Yeah. It's one of those things. And I imagine, what do you feel like when you come up here on a daily basis? I mean, do you feel like it's finished, or do you feel like this is just, we've completed multiple phases, but we still have work to do?
Yeah. I mean, I think I have maybe kind of two feelings. I mean, one, many days I get that same feeling that I have just about every time that we come up here. It's just, there's this something magical. There's this escape, you're literally rising, and up this hill, and hills play such an important role in Fayetteville. But then also this, this feeling of escape and restoration. So I get that feeling. And then I also have a feeling of, honestly, like, no, we're just getting started. The hospitality with Stonebreaker and Restaurant and Club has been open, just a little over a year, but really just getting started. There's still a lot of people to discover this place, and, a lot of work to do there. And then on the neighborhood, we very much are just getting started. I mean, most of the neighborhood it's taken a long time, a lot of work to get here to kind of plant, the beginnings of that garden, so that then we can start actually building homes and townhomes up here, which is, of course, happening now. But yeah, I think there's probably a decade worth of work up here,
easily,
with housing to go and expectation that the hospitality venues, the barn, the restaurant, the club, becomes our vision. Our hope is it becomes a kind of a Fayetteville institution. I mean, there's nothing else physically like it. The combination of nature and urbanism, the combination of nature, in the middle of the city at the doorstep of the university is just so unique. And we want Stonebreaker and we want Markham Hill, to be that. We want to be, known as a culinary and hospitality destination that is differentiated than any other experience that you could have in Northwest Arkansas.
Yeah. Stonebreaker personally to me has always felt like more than just a hotel. It is a gathering space. It's a gathering place. It's a gathering space. It is a third space, if you will. I've actually come up here and worked from time to time, but I mean, there's a lot of people that come up here on this hill for different reasons. I'd be curious to know what's the one thing that you've taken away from that experience that has really informed how you're going to move forward with the continuation of the development. Is there anything specifically that stands out to you that you've gleaned just from the interactions that you've had with people that have come through these doors?
Yeah, I mean, this is a little bit redundant, but what you just said, I mean, the vision, and it is so much more than lodging. We don't see this as just a place to come sleep or stay. I mean, we want to be a place of restoration for people, and that could mean they're staying overnight. That could just mean they're come to celebrate a birthday.
Yeah.
Or celebrate a great day or a bad day or whatever it is.
Or bring their office mates here to work on some projects in an afternoon.
Yes, absolutely. To escape, it is a rare, opportunity, minutes away, but it feels so much more than that you can come up here, you can clear your mind, you can collaborate, you can have some solitude, whatever it is that you're looking for, and escape a little bit, from the realities of day to day for whatever that means, to focus on yourself or to solve a problem or to collaborate. And certainly the hotel is an important part of that, but it is just a component. We see this as a place of gathering and celebration, both large and small. You mentioned Roots. Like, I think when Roots was here, like, that is the vision of how we want this place to feel, all the time. And sometimes that's large ways, and other ways that can just be small ways.
Yeah.
This combination of food and art and music and neighbors and nature that I think is just really, really fantastic.
And a really cool barn.
Yeah.
Can't forget the barn.
That's
the
right.
barn is really great. And I've been there for several events, get-togethers with Creative Mornings and other organizations that have had meetings up here. I would highly encourage, if you haven't been up here to see it, to come check it out. I want to switch gears just a little bit to talk about another project that you're working on, Drake Farms, which is completely different scale than anything that we've discussed this far. 165 acres, a 15 to 20 year horizon. So this is not a short project. Healthcare, housing, green space, local businesses, all designed as a complete neighborhood rather than a collection of projects. How do you even begin to think about something that big? Because I'm just speaking these words and all of these different concepts and ideas together, just putting your arms around it. How do you do that?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, daunting when you think about it at that scale. The interesting thing about Drake Farms is a lot of the foundation was laid for us. The Pendergraft family has been acquiring that property and, stewarding that property now for decades. And, some of our good friends at High Street had been involved in planning and design of that neighborhood. Again, at the conceptual and master plan scale. We entered the picture kind of as that was coming, to a close and fruition, and then ultimately have been blessed that the Pendergraft family has asked us to steward that. I think the answer to your question is at least the only way that we can think about, how you tackle or how you steward something of that scale is you've got to have a clear framework. You've got to have a clear long-term vision and values of what you want to accomplish. But then you've got to take it, at the scale of neighborhood and people. And so we are working to begin to create a meaningful neighborhood, even just with the first phase. And it will evolve and it will mature over time as different uses, whether that be healthcare uses or hospitality uses or shopping uses, are added over time. But we're starting with some meaningful housing with great design and great building science, along with a neighborhood scale scale commercial district that will have, coffee and food and beverage and some office and some, things to do at the neighborhood scale. We're not going in there and building some, big giant thing, to attract people.
Yeah.
It's really just incrementally creating, with a long-term vision in mind, incrementally creating a great neighborhood and a great place to live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kind of why I talked about playing the long game and not the short one. For people that are listening to this, to orient themselves in terms of location specifically, sure. Where is Drake Farms?
Yeah. The first thing I always say is if you've lived in Northwest Arkansas for very long, you've probably driven south on I-49 in the holidays. And as you kind of begin to crest, come down the hill from Johnson, you see this lit up barn with Christmas lights on it. I don't know how long Neil has done that, but for a long time, that's Drake Farms.
Okay.
That's the heart of Drake Farms. That's, many people, have gone to celebrations or, had music even in that barn as Neil has hosted events over the years. But it is the boundaries, so to speak, of Drake Farms are Drake Avenue, obviously on the south, and the east and west boundaries are Gregg and Garland, or 112. And so it's immediately west of the hospital. So if you think of Washington Regional, immediately west on the other side of Gregg is Drake Farms. And there's 165 acres there that, that Neil assembled over time with a lot of good stories. But we talk about it as Fayetteville's front porch. I mean, it's kind of the northern gateway. It's even though it is literally, it is smack dab. It's very, very visible from lots of different places. It's been farmland, and pasture and Neil's homestead for a really long time. And so not a lot of people, realize it's there. It's right next to the University Agri Park. And so I think a lot of times it just kind of gets assumed to be part of the Agri Park,
Sure.
even though it's not. And there's some special things about it. Noah Drake, 100-ish years ago, planted this grove of trees that now are just magnificent. And
Walnut Grove, right?
Yes. He created a hybrid of walnut and pecan trees. And I'm not the botanist to explain all of the details, but he was trying to create a soft-shelled walnut, I believe. And the really beautiful story to that is he failed in what he was trying to accomplish from a nut standpoint, but it is, this magical place.
We call that a happy accident.
Yeah, it is. So it's this magical place that will be preserved as a part of Drake Farms, forever, and is going to serve as a beautiful, grove and Central Park for the neighborhood. And, even as Washington Regional expands, they will, be able to, patients and employees will be able to enjoy that nature space.
Yeah, no, that's exciting. I can't wait. I've seen a little bit of the work that's going up over there. You can't miss it, especially if you come around the bend there after leaving Sam's and driving the back way and not getting on the highway. So that's going to be exciting to see. Man, you guys are working on so much. I want to be respectful of your time because you were kind enough to sit down with us so that we could have this conversation. I wanted to ask, when you're not solving the residential and housing problems of Northwest Arkansas, I would love for you to kind of just, find out what is your casual go-to date night spot when you're going to hang out yourself, when you're not busy working on drawings or talking to a contractor or coming up with a new idea for a new space.
We go to a lot of different places downtown. Our go-to is start walking somewhere and end up and have dinner. One of our favorite spots is Leverett Lounge. I think it's such a unique and Fayetteville place and has, great food and great people and great environment. That's one of our go-tos for sure.
Yeah. And this is another one. This is not a trick question, but besides Markham Hill, where do you go in this region when you just need to get outside and clear your head? Because I know we're looking at a tree canopy here where I would literally just walk out there and hang out and I've done that, but someplace other than Markham Hill.
I grew up on the water, not literally, but I spent a lot of time fishing with my grandfather. And so every chance that I can get on the White River or the lake and fish, that's my secret spot.
Okay. All right. Yeah. The White River is beautiful. And then what is the one restaurant you would take any out of town guest to without even thinking about it? Would it be Leverett Lounge or is there another spot? Because the Leverett Lounge sounds like that's just your spot that you like to go to and frequent.
We do take people to Leverett a lot, but my answer is Hugo's. If someone is being introduced to Fayetteville, I take them to Hugo's.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that is, listen, their fries are otherworldly. So they are really, really good. So, and then currently right now in 2026, at the time of us recording this, what is your single favorite thing about living in Northwest Arkansas?
It's the combination of access to nature and great neighborhoods and just great people. I just think that it is such a rare combination to live in an environment where there are just really good people with good economic opportunities, but yet, you're 5 to 10 to 15 minutes away from some of the most beautiful places in the country.
Yeah, you really are. You really are. So, and I kind of, like I said, I get out every day and I just look at I'm over at the Fayetteville Public Library on a daily basis because that's where I work, but I look out and I just enjoy the view and I'm just like, man, the Ozarks, there's just nothing like it. So it really is nice. All right. This is the final question. I promise. This is kind of a legacy question here. I want you to sit with this one. 20 years from now, what do you hope people say about Specialized Real Estate Group and the work you all have done here in Northwest Arkansas?
I really hope that people love and cherish the places that we created. I honestly care less about whether they know anything about Specialized, but whether that's Markham Hill, South Yard, Drake, I hope those are projects that endure and become anchors for this community of where people live, where people gather. That's what I hope. And, my hope is that, way beyond me, the organization that I'm building, is able to continue to do those types of projects. But I hope that our legacy is we leave behind some really great places and neighborhoods.
Yeah. As my grandfather always used to say, leave a place better than you found it.
Absolutely. That's absolutely right.
Man, Jeremy, thank you for this. Genuinely. I really appreciate this. Is actually the kind of conversation that I always hope to have with this podcast. And it's one of the reasons why we've always enjoyed focusing on the intersection of business, culture, entrepreneurship, and life here in the Ozarks, because there's a story for everyone in this space. And I really appreciate you sharing your story. And the thing that strikes me most about Specialized Real Estate Group is that you're not just building buildings, you're building a case for what this region can be, one project at a time. Like you said, Markham Hill, the Stonebreaker, South Yard, Drake Farms, who knows what's next? Each one of them is an answer to the same question. How do we grow without losing ourselves? If anybody listening to this says, man, I need to connect with Jeremy and talk with him about something, or maybe I want to buy one of the houses that he's building, what's the best way for them to get in contact with you?
Probably the easiest way is just to shoot me an email. It's Jeremy, Jeremy, at specialized reg, as in realestategroup.com. And I will be in touch.
Yeah, well, we'll make sure we put all of that in the show notes, and we'll put all the information so you can get in contact with Jeremy. I really want to encourage you to come check out the Stonebreaker, especially as a third space if you live or work in Fayetteville. But even if you don't, and you're down here and you're looking for a place to work, my advice is to come here. They've got amazing coffee and tea in the morning, all kinds of, you can get a nice meal at lunchtime, some snacks in the afternoon, and even some appetizers in the evening. So depending on how long your work scales, you can do it all right here at the Stonebreaker. So I really want to encourage you to do that. So for everyone listening, I will have all the links again for Specialized Real Estate Group, Markham Hill, the Stonebreaker, and Drake Farms in the show notes. Go explore what they're building. And if you have not been up the hill yet, make the trip. It is worth it. As always, if you're living it, building it, or loving it in Northwest Arkansas, this show is for you. I'm Randy Wilburn, and this has been another episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. We'll see you next time. Peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of I Am Northwest Arkansas. Check us out each and every week, available anywhere that great podcasts can be found. For show notes or more information on becoming a guest, visit IamNorthwestArkansas.com. We'll see you next week on I Am Northwest Arkansas.